Welcome to The Explainer. So, today we're cracking open the playbook, really getting inside how detectives solve crimes in this crazy digital age. We're talking about a world where, the crime scene is literally global and the clues, they're written in code.
Okay, so the internet's been amazing, right? But it's also opened up this whole new frontier for crime. And we're not talking about some lone wolf in a basement here. The criminals behind these threats, they are seriously organized. They're sophisticated groups, and they're targeting everyone, from huge companies all the way down to the most vulnerable people in our society. They're using tech to exploit, to defraud, and to intimidate.
So that leads to the big question, right? How in the world do you catch a criminal who leaves no fingerprints and could be anywhere on the planet? Well, the answer isn't just about fancier software or more powerful computers. It's actually all about a disciplined way of thinking, a specific mindset that lets investigators cut through all that digital noise. So let's break down what that really looks like.
All right, let's start at the most critical point imaginable, the very beginning of an investigation. This is the moment where just one decision, one tiny assumption, can literally make or break the entire case.
Think about it. When a big cyber incident goes down, it's just frantic. You've got alarms going off, data vanishing, and everybody is screaming for answers right now. But here's the thing. The best investigators, they know they have to fight that urge to rush. They have to slow it all down, give themselves that space to think clearly, and make really sound, logical judgments. So, to bring some order to that initial chaos, investigators have a clear process they follow right from the get-go. So, really logical progression. First, you have to figure out if a crime was even committed. Then, you gather up all the evidence. You chase down every reasonable lead. You identify the people responsible. And, finally, you build a case for the prosecution. This isn't just a checklist, It's the roadmap that keeps the whole investigation on track.
But that's a huge challenge, isn't it? I mean, with this flood of data and such high stakes, it's so easy to jump to conclusions or just follow the most obvious trail. So how do they avoid that bias and see the case clearly? Well, to fight this, investigators have this core principle that's kind of like their professional mantra.
And this is it, the ABC principle. It's really the golden rule for investigators. Assume nothing, believe nothing, challenge and check everything. It forces them to constantly look for proof. Has this piece of data been double-checked? Is this witness telling the truth? It makes sure that nothing, and I mean nothing, is just taken for granted. And no potential lead gets ignored just because it doesn't fit with how they thought things went down.
Okay, so once that skeptical mindset is locked in, how do they actually start to organize this mountain of digital evidence? Well, the next step is all about bringing order to the chaos, and they do that using structured models. So instead of just reacting to whatever comes up, investigators use frameworks like this one, the Cyber Investigator's Staircase Model, or CSM for short. And just like the name says, it's a way to methodically climb through a problem one step at a time, making sure each stage is solid before moving up to the next. It guides them all the way from figuring out their objective to looking at the consequences of their actions. And this model breaks a super complex process down into a really clear sequence. But look at step 3 here, developing various options. That's absolutely critical. Why? Because it's a guard against getting tunnel vision. It forces investigators to think outside the box and consider multiple possibilities before they commit to a single theory in step 4. So how do you even get the information for step 2 of that staircase model? Well, you use this simple but incredibly powerful matrix. We're talking the classic 5 W's and an H. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. It helps organize all the facts you know, but, and this is just as important, it immediately shows you the gaps. It highlights what you don't know yet. This thing becomes like a living document that guides the whole investigation. Okay, but what happens when that matrix is looking pretty empty? When the facts are few and far between and the path forward is murky? This is where an investigator has to switch gears. They stop being just a collector of facts, and they have to start thinking like a theorist. Right? A hypothesis. When you just don't have enough evidence, a hypothesis gives you a starting point, a theory you can actually test. Maybe the attack was all about money. Or, hey, maybe it was an inside job. But you have to be so careful with this. The big danger is you fall into this trap of trying to make the facts fit your theory instead of letting the facts shape your theory. Huge difference. And this slide shows a perfect example of a key distinction investigators have to make, and they have to make it early. Understanding the why, the motivation behind an attack, is absolutely everything. Is the goal just to get rich, which points towards cybercrime? Or is it something bigger, like undermining the government and pushing an ideology? That points to cyberterrorism. And the answer completely changes the nature and the priority of the whole investigation. And believe me, this is not just some academic exercise. Take the case of Eunice Tooley, who went by Erhabi007 online. This case showed how a single person, just sitting in a flat in London, could use the internet to help plan actual real-world attacks. He was using stolen credit card data to fund terrorism. He was piecing together little scraps of info he found online to do virtual recon on military bases. This case proved without a doubt that the threat was real, it was present, and it was deadly. But, in this world of code and networks and these huge global conspiracies, it's so important we don't forget that at the heart of every single one of these cybercrimes, there's a human victim. See, to solve these kinds of crimes, law enforcement absolutely needs the public's help. They need their support and cooperation, and that trust, it's either built or it's completely broken during that very first interaction. When a victim reports a crime, the way they're treated right then and there sets the tone for everything else that's going to follow. To handle this crucial human side of things, officers are often guided by a principle like the LISTEN acronym, and it's such a powerful reminder to listen to people's concerns, inspire their confidence, and take ownership of their report. This isn't just about, good customer service. It's essential police work. A victim who feels like they've actually been heard and supported, they become one of the most valuable assets you can have in any case. This quote right here, it just perfectly captures the huge shift in modern crime. The whole scale of it has changed. We've gone from the single big stakes bank heist to a world of low impact but incredibly high volume crime. We're talking about millions of tiny little thefts that can be committed by one person from thousands of miles away. And that creates a challenge for law enforcement that is just mind-boggling in its volume. And that really leaves us with a final thought to chew on. As technology just keeps accelerating and crime gets more and more complex, are those timeless detective skills, logic, discipline, structured thinking, empathy, are they becoming obsolete? Or are they actually our most powerful, most essential weapons in the fight for digital justice? Something to think about.